of South Africa, your time is now. You are not just the future, you are the force that can change this country right now. You are the millions sitting in classrooms with no teachers. You are the graduates with no jobs. You are the hustlers, the dreamers, the fighters, and they want you silent. But time for silence is over. The ballot is your weapon. Registering to vote is the first act of defiance. Here's how you do it. Go to www.elections.org.za on your phone or computer. Click Register Online. Enter your ID number and home address, where you live and where you'll vote. Confirm your voting station and boom, you're registered to vote. Don't have internet? No problem. Go to your local IEC office or voter registration station with your green ID book or smart card and register in person. History is made by the brave. Register to vote. Stand up and be counted.
So the video I've just played is the late Peter Mokaba, who was singing "Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer" at the funeral of the late Chris Hani. But we're going to delve into that quite shortly. So it's a Friday, ladies and gentlemen, Jumbo Africa, Africa Tsonga and the diaspora. My name is Titus Tshungu, and we're coming to you from Winnie Madikizela Mandela House. Today I'm quite excited to be joined by a Black consciousness scholar, a historian, and a researcher, Professor Neo Lekgotla Laga. Thank you very much for coming through, Prof. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
I may have not done justice in my intro, but if you may, just introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Neo Lekgotla Laga. I'm born in Lady Selborne, 1967, but the apartheid government forced removed to my community. Then they relocated us to Garankuwa. So I'm raised in Garankuwa, Pitori. Kibua Pitori.
Okay.
I did all my schooling there. So when I say Kiahai, I go to Garankuwa. But I live in Midrand. My family, and I teach at the University of the Free State. September will be my third year. Previously, I was teaching at Wits for 5 years. I left for promotion. Yeah, and then I prefer to say I'm a Pan-Africanist scholar, but Black consciousness is within Pan-Africanism. Yeah, that's how I see myself. I'm South African because today I think it's very important. I think it's very important today that we say, especially the way we look, the way we dress. I think it's important to say we are South Africans.
Sure.
I've lived all my life here. The only time I was out of the country was when I was doing my PhD in Washington, D.C. I spent 3 years there, but all my life I've been here. Kimutlako, those are my roots from Rustenburg. They call it the colonial name. They call it Maviskral. Our Khosi there, Kimabi. So that's why they say Maviskral, but it's Tlakong. And then I'm happy that the EFF was launched in my community.
Oh, yes.
Rustenburg. So every time I
yes.
go home, I have to pass through that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think that's how I can introduce myself. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a brother. Ke malume, ke rangwane,
Thobela.
Yeah.
And you wrote a book titled Robben Island Songs of Struggle, Izingoma Zemzabalazo, and that's why you are here today, just to reflect on the book that you have written, and which captures really the history of South Africa. Perhaps if you can just share with us a brief history of Robben Island in the context of South African liberation struggle against colonial oppression, racial segregation, and discrimination.
Anyway, I know your organization doesn't have money, but to answer that question, I'm trying to do a proposal to look at the history of Robben Island from the time before Jan van Riebeeck came, 1652, because they say the Table Mountain, they say the Khoi and San people live there. So when Jan van Riebeeck arrived before he got to Cape Town, he landed on Robben Island, because Robben Island is before Cape Town. So that's where he started. So the colonial history of Robben Island starts with the Dutch East Indian Company, because of Jan van Riebeeck was writing the memos, letters to his home country, the Netherlands, about where he is, But the history of Robben Island that we know is the history of political imprisonment, the 20th century, the Robert Sobukwe, Rolihlahla Mandela, the Khamusineke, Tate Makwetu, you can mention all of them. Professor Sadiq Isaacs, a PhD, a scientist. Professor Neo Lekgotla, the colored, Brutus, colored, and Ahmed Kathrada, Indian. I'm mentioning them because, the history of this country, the issue of race,
Yeah, and some of them, like the former judge president Musaneke, has written the foreword.
Yeah, has written the foreword. So it's important that. So I wrote my book. This one is based on that period. But in the introduction, I've tried to go back to say Jan van Riebeeck, was here. The first political prisoners on Robben Island were the Khoi and San people. We need to write that story. Ochomato, if you have been to Robben Island, we had a boat called Ochomato. Ochomato was a rebel who fought Jan van Riebeeck because Jan van Riebeeck was taking their sheep, was taking their land.
Oh, okay.
And then we also have a woman, Krotoa. Her real name is Krotoa, also was in prison on Robben Island because she refused to dress in the colonial clothes. She always wanted to dress in her Khoi and San clothes.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's a very important period that we have in. And then Madiba, in his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom, he mentions them. He mentioned Ochomato. That Ochomato, they are not the first political prisoners to be on Robben Island. There were other people. So that's another history that we still need to look at. But the reason why I wrote about this period is because I work on Robben Island. So I was part of the researchers. I was in the Heritage Department for 3 years, and then we were interviewing former political prisoners. Because during apartheid, Robben Island and everybody who was on Robben Island was banned, so you couldn't see their picture. Okay, I know you were born 1981, so I'm born in 1967.
Why are you making me old?
Yeah, you are. And then me, I'm a mkulu now.
Yeah.
So I was an insider. I could not have written this book if I was you, because these people who are on Robben Island, they are very sensitive. Black consciousness, the Pan-Africanist Congress, the ANC, the New Unity Movement, Professor Neo Lekgotla was a New Unity Movement, our mayor on Robben Island, Daniel's, forgotten his first name, he was a member of the former judge who passed away. He was a member of his sister was the chairperson of the election committee. I've forgotten his name, but he was on Robben Island. He was a member of the New Unity Movement. So it was colored Africanist. And also we have the Pan-Africanist Congress. Robert Sobukwe was there, and we have the ANC. And after 1976, we had the Black Consciousness kids. They say they are klapgouers, never gonna matlapa, during 76. When they got on Robben Island, that's what they called them, So you have Robben Island. This book speaks about the three generations: the Rivonia Trialist generation, the 60s generation, Robert Sobukwe, who got there in 63, not 63, 63, after Sharpeville, and then Rivonia Trialist, Mandela, Kathrada, Ahmed Kathrada, Govenbeek, that group who went there in 1964. And then you had a lull in South African history after they banned all the liberation movement. And then you had the Soweto uprisings. Then you had these kids who went to Robben Island. And Nelson Mandela, in his memoir, Long Walk to Freedom, he say when they arrived, they turned Robben Island upside down because they were wearing caps in prison. If the prisoners say, you must remove your head, if you remove my head, if they hit him with a fist, they will hit him back. So the Black consciousness generation, when they got there after 76, they changed Robben Island because they felt they are not gonna. Actually, they say they were excited to go to Robben Island because they knew they're gonna find, they're gonna see their heroes, right? But they say when they got there, Strini Motley, the founding members, and Professor Seth Cooper, who's still alive, founding members of Black Consciousness with Steve Biko, Indians from Durban. They say when they got to Robben Island, they were excited because they were going to meet their heroes. And when they got there, they found these old timers who were so marinated by having spent so much time in prison, and they were disappointed. So these are interviews. They are there at the Mayubuye, Robben Island Archives at the University of Western Cape. They are in film. So if you have anyone whose member went to Robben Island, their past, where I've recorded their history, you can just go there and see it and ask for a copy.
Yeah.
We have done that work. I've done it for 3 years, and I got a Ford Foundation International Fellowship to go to Howard in Washington, D.C. I went to Howard because Howard, it's a Black university in the mold of Fort Hare. They fought here in our struggle. The Black Power movement was formed at Howard. So I chose the university because I did all my degrees in a white university, University of Natal, and then I was tired to be told how to remember my history.
Absolutely, and we're going to touch on that, and of course we're going to try and get your thoughts on what really you mean by that. But I want us to go to chapter 9 of your book, where you really talk about cultural resistance on Robben Island, which was embarked upon by political prisoners. But before we dip into that, I want us to look at how did the political prisoners keep the fire burning even though they were in prison. You talked about your Sharpeville massacre, there have been your Bisho, your Buipatong. How were they able to keep the fire burning even though they were incarcerated?
Oh, this interview is getting hot.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah. So the saddest thing really is that I'm the first Black or African person to write a book on Robben Island.
Sure.
In 2025, people who have written books on Robben Island, they are not African or Black.
Sure.
They are white people, because maybe they have funding and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. And that is good, but I'm bringing an African Black consciousness, Pan-Africanist perspective, having been grown.
We're telling
during
our own
apartheid.
stories.
Yeah, I'm telling our own stories.
Uncensored, unfiltered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I'm just opening a gate where others will follow, So, so after Sharpeville, right? After Sharpeville, the apartheid government banned all the liberation movement on the 8th of April. So those that the apartheid government was able to arrest, they took them to Robben Island. And then others were able to go into exile. O.R. Tambo, Thabo Mbeki, that generation. Mashupe, just buried her this weekend. That generation were able to go into exile. But those who remain in the country, they ended up on Robben Island. Right? So the 60s on Robben Island is the most brutal period of political imprisonment because the white people, the Afrikaner, felt that this generation want to push white people into ocean to go back. That has never been. We know that has never been the idea. We can also link that with what is happening with the Afrikaner that went to America. So the 60s was very, very difficult. I mean, one example, Ntate Johnson Mlambo
Yes.
was they dig a hole and in a sand and they put him in the sand, the prisoners, the wardens. I mean, they are young, 18, 19, and then they only left his head and they urinated on him. I mean, you can imagine your hands are inside. So when they urinate on your face, there's nothing you can do, right?
You're helpless.
Yeah. Dennis Brutus was beaten so much because Dennis Brutus, he was the chairperson of the sports boycott. He didn't want the Springbok to play internationally and the cricket, and he succeeded when he left Robben Island. But when they arrested him, he tried to run away. They shot him and they took him back to Robben Island. He spent 3 years there. Okay, so these are the 60s. But the generation who were on Robben Island in the 60s, Mandela and his generation, daily they really try to communicate with the International Red Cross to say that political prisoners also have rights. So year in, year out, they were talking with the prison warders to say, we are political prisoners and we have rights. So hanyani, they were gaining these privileges, right? So the 70s, so they didn't have beds. In the 60s, they didn't have beds. I mean, Robben Island is on the Atlantic Ocean. It's cold there. You sleep on the mats, and then it's cement there. It's like you are in a fridge. So most of them came out of Robben Island sick, pneumonia and all this. When tuberculosis, what do they call it? When you cannot
Suffocated?
Yeah, they suffocated. They had short breath, but there's this disease where a lot of people who smoke they catch it.
Okay.
But it was not smoking there; it was the cold on Robben Island. So the 60s was not good, right? There are political prisoners who were beaten to death on Robben Island in the 60s. They were buried there. Recently, my colleagues who are there, I will say for the first time here, Dr. Nolu Babalo, Tongo Tsetshwayo. She just been told that her PhD is passed. Um, she had a project where they talked with the families of the people who died on Robben Island, and then they came and then removed them, and then the families were able to give them a dignified burial. But there are still people there who are who you know who died and were buried there. Yeah, Reconciliation Commission, I don't know what it did with that, but those are some of the things that we still need to deal with it. So the 70s, my brother, it was very, very interesting period because you have the youth of 76 who came in and said, look, we must continue the struggle, to fight the struggle in prison. The 80s, the political prisoners who came on in the 80s, they say that those who were there in 70s and 60s, they say those who came on Ravenna in the 80s, they came to a 5-star hotel because they already had beds, they had radios, But maybe I haven't answered your question. The question of cultural resistance, they had soccer teams. They had, they had rugby teams. They had music teams. I focus on the music, but there's somebody was already a white professor from America was already written about the soccer on Robben Island. So when we're trying South Africa trying to host the World Cup in 2010, no 2006 we didn't get it. FIFA when they came in 2010 they went to Robben Island because there was a Makana Football Association. The Kamusnek as a lawyer was a chairperson there. They had a constitution. So Makana Football Association was submitted into FIFA. The importance of recreation on Robben Island, right? I focus on the music because, we've always been singing, we get married, we have a funeral, we sing,
Yeah.
we
We
do,
ululate.
yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
So singing was so important for these people that
Sure.
and look, singing was not only political, right? These people have left their wives, they've left their mothers. I mean, the Kamusnek, when he was arrested, he was 15.
Mhm.
The apartheid government imprisoned kids. I mean, when you're 15, you're a kid.
Mhm.
He missed his mother. He talks about that experience in his book, his memoir, My Own Liberator. He said when her mother brought her chicken, full chicken, he will eat it limarap, you know. It's about longing. When are you gonna get the chicken again? Yeah, so I mean, these guys to hear them sing. The 3 years I was on Robben Island when we invite them, those who are coming from Johannesburg, they flew from OR Tambo to Cape Town International. We had others, Ntate Makadingake was in Botswana. We had others who were coming from Eastern Cape. All of them, they flew into Cape Town. And then we had a group, a team with cameras and recorders. And when they met, we are coming from Namibia. We had Swapo. We're coming from Namibia. She's from Eastern Cape, Limpopo, different province, Northern Cape, Northwest. You were on Robben Island together, but when they met these men for the first time, they didn't greet each other. They sang.
Okay.
We filmed everything. So that's the power of the song in struggle, in everything that we do, you know. So I focus on that because for me, the music stood out that this is so they had nothing. I say in the book that cultural resistance was their Shinwam. That's all they had.
Sure.
They would not have survived if they didn't use the culture of singing. They would not have succeeded. They would not have survived.
Mhm.
And Robben Island broke a lot of families, broke a lot of marriages. We have the famous one that was broken, but a lot of marriages were broken. People came back.
Mhm.
You come back out of prison and find your wife has got other kids, and you're away.
Very painful.
Yeah. So we also need to talk about that. Ahmed Kathrada says that Robben Island was a triumph against. It was a triumph of the human spirit. It's true, but there were other people that were killed, were defeated. It was not triumph for everybody, and the Black consciousness is a generation that challenged that statement. You see there when you read Seth Cooper. Seth Cooper is still alive. He's a psychiatrist by training. He's a professor of psychology. They have offices here in Houghton. When I interviewed him, he said it. Neo, Robben Island has destroyed a lot of people. The triumph thing is for few. I mean, Madiba, when he came out of Robben Island, maybe he was depraved. He had psychologists. You know, not everybody had that. It depended where you were in the level of position in the movement.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So there are people who left Robben Island. When I was on Robben Island, we went to see Tebe. Tebe is a village in the Eastern Cape. Beautiful. We went there to interview the Pan Africanist Congress, Abotata, who were there in after Sharpeville. So they were arrested. And then some of them, we interviewed them, they were lying on their beds.
Mhm.
Those are the political prisoners that the museum, the country has forgotten about them, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's the sad and painful side of the prison.
Yeah.
We had other beautiful stories, that
Sure.
we can talk about, but
Sure.
we must not hide those
Yeah. Yeah.
under your red carpet.
And talking about the history of Robben Island, I'm more inclined now to ask you about this question, which remains a controversy, and I'm glad you are here to give us the facts, because this platform serves to build society, inform society, and clarify any contradictions that may exist. There are rumors. I don't know if that's a correct word, but there are claims that the real Nelson Mandela was killed in prison by the white regime, a white apartheid regime, and they brought in somebody else from Zimbabwe or
Why
Mozambique.
you choose Zimbabwe?
I'm talking
Choose
about claims.
Lesotho, Swaziland,
Yeah, they brought somebody, and then who is a clone. Can you just perhaps set the record straight? Was Mandela killed or not in
Look,
prison?
I'm not gonna set the record straight because these things they need a DNA and all of that. But if you see there are two women in that book, right?
Yes.
There are two
yes,
ladies.
Yes.
The other one
Oh
is
yes.
my wife who supported me when I went to Howard. She passed away. The first one there.
This one.
Yeah,
Okay.
Tshungu. Yeah,
this one.
she look. The reason why I'm mentioning her is because
Tshungu.
she used to say, and I'm not using her because she's dead. I'm just saying, she used to say she doesn't believe that this Madiba is the Madiba who went to prison. She used to say that. Even if she was here, I was still gonna say that. She used to say that that's one thing. Look, there are things that this President Mandela did that in snippets will show you that this is the Madiba who was imprisoned. The statement that he used to say, You remember when the American president George Bush, when he came here, he said it's not going to meet him because, he they went to attack Iran, that weapon of mass destruction. He said, I'm not going to meet him. Madiba, when he came out of prison, they said he mustn't go to Cuba. They say he mustn't go to see Arafat. And he made that powerful statement to say, you cannot choose who my friends are. These people were with me when I was in prison. He went to Jamaica, he went to Cuba, he went to see Palestine. The statement that he made on Palestine when I was in prison and after that, those are some of the points that shows us that whatever they did to Madiba in prison, they could not clone him 100% if they cloned him, because that militancy now and again came out. Okay. But Madiba, he was interviewed by Oprah Winfrey, and then in that interview, Oprah said to Madiba, laughing, did you have to spend so much time in prison to change? And Madiba was serious about responding to that question. He said, when you're in prison, I mean, those who have been in Robben Island, Madiba's cell is maybe from here to there, this table, and you see how tall that guy is. And Madiba said, when you're in prison for that long alone, you come face to face with you. There's no one, there's no radio, and you can introspect. You can see that, okay, I was a militant. Where's the militancy has taken me? These are my words now. And then when I get out of prison, what is it that we need to do to move this country forward, right? When I taught adverts, I started to teach adverts in 2018. And then it was the centenary year of Mandela, 2018, because he was born in 1918, 1918. Then I said to my students, look, we are going to look at the centenary history of Nelson Mandela. This is 2018. And the ladies at the back of my class stood up and said, no, Dr. Neo, we don't want to hear anything about Mandela now. We're tired. He's a sellout. These are the students, they were completing 2018. These are the students 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. These are the fees must fall students, military, militant. And they said to me, you must teach us about women in their struggle. And I had to create a course with Amao, Mama Winnie, all the women who were in the struggle, So that's my take. I've written an article when I was teaching adverts, I've written an article on Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela in the 40s, he was the only law student at Wits. So in the cafeteria, when Madiba comes, we're all sitting here. They are white. When he comes to sit, they were moving. As a law student, he didn't finish. How can you finish under those circumstances?
Discrimination, yeah.
But I wrote that using I covered documents from Wits University. If you Google my name, you Google Mandela at Wits, it will come up. And then you can read it. So Nelson Mandela was in prison on Robben Island because he was, at the time, dangerous. Robert Sobukwe Mangaliso was put on Robben Island after 3 years of Sharpeville. He was in prison in Pretoria. After 3 years, they felt they cannot release him. He's too dangerous. They put him on Robben Island. So anyone who ended on Robben Island was a danger to the apartheid government, right? But when you look at it, Nelson Mandela, when he became a president in 1994, the inauguration in May 10, 1994, when he got the Union building, he had to grade the military generals All of them, they were white. There, in my view, there was nothing he can do other than the way that he had to go reconciliation, nation building.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they would have shot him. I mean, they were ready. That military, they were ready to take over again the country if he was going to do anything. Maybe he was also advised by, the supporters of the anti-apartheid, the African American. He became close to Bill Clinton. Maybe he was advised that, look, the only way to go is to think about reconciliation, nation building.
So, by virtue of the events that you have already,
Yeah.
painted or talked about, this is the real Nelson Mandela.
Look, I'm saying anyone to say this is the real Nelson Mandela must do a DNA test. My first job when I came from Howard, I worked for the Nelson Mandela Foundation. I met Nelson Mandela in person. So he had Ubuntu, So every new staff member that came, he wanted to meet them and know where they're coming from. Meeting him, I didn't know him before he got to prison, but when I met him, I felt the power of this man, Madiba, who never said anything about himself, but talked about me. Yeah, that was a powerful experience for me. I've given you the examples that the reconciliation nation building undermined transformation, right? So there are things that the Mandela presidency, in hindsight, we could say they could have done them better, but we cannot say, because I'm saying he was a presidency over the apartheid structure, the military, everything, the police, right?
Sure.
We need, if the country needs to know if this is the real Madiba, maybe a DNA needs to be done. They need to go and, Umama K is buried in the Eastern Cape, is buried in the Eastern Cape. DNA, in the bones is there. That's the only thing that we can find out if this was a clone Madiba. Yeah, that's the only way.
Sure.
So he was not perfect. He went to that festival or conference rally in Durban, and he said that we must throw the pangas and everything into the ocean, right? And he was criticized by the NC, he was criticized by everybody because they felt we cannot do that because apartheid is still here. If anything happens, we can't go into the sea and get those things. But I'm saying, and I said to my student at Wits, I said, if we say Nelson Mandela was a sellout, look at how Wits treated him as the only African law student. They put him on Robben Island for almost 30 years. You do that if you're afraid of somebody. How he came out, the question that we ask is this: Nelson Mandela? I've seen also an interview with Winnie Mandela where he also questioned, make reference to this Mandela is a different Mandela. You are in the prison again, in a small prison for the rest of your life. You have to do self-introspection. Maybe the self-introspection that Madiba made was to take this country forward. We have the roads today, we still have the roads, but if 1994 have gone, when Chris Hani was assassinated, if the country have gone differently, we would not have this Johannesburg, we would have burned it down, right?
Sure.
So Madiba and people who advised him, maybe they had that foresight. And maybe I'm talking that because now I'm getting older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Prof, I want us to come to the heart of this book. songs of struggle, izingoma zemzabalazo, and try and link it to contemporary issues.
Yeah.
The kill the Boer, kill the farmer chant has been topical. It made global headlines. It even got attention at the Oval Office in Washington, in the White House. But let's look at the history and the role of songs of struggle, which were sang mainly by revolutionaries, freedom fighters. Uh, why were these songs so important in the liberation struggle during the apartheid era?
Yeah. Look, this is a very, very important question you're asking. On Tuesday, I interviewed Mambale Gambetta on this book I'm writing on the history of the ANC. I'm writing it through the songs, through heritage culture. I'm not interested in the presidency. I want to hear the ordinary people, right? And the reason why I interviewed her is because in my book and in my PhD, I listened to a CD where she was saying, and I quote her, I don't know how we would have survived the camps if it was not for a song.
Okay.
Right? In the same CD, South African liberation songs, they interviewed Desmond Tutu, they interviewed Ronnie Castrell. Ronnie Castrell even sang this song, Shayela Mabala umkonto uyeza. You know, Shayela Mabala umkonto uyeza. It's a very, very emotive song. They were singing it in the camps. That's a wedding song. Fiela Mabala Makoti Uyetla. You know? But the songs, we've been able to change them to suit the context of today. So they were saying, we must clean the street in South Africa, prepare for Umkhonto Wesizwe is coming back to hit the apartheid government. It's a very, very emotional song if you listen to it, right? So the apartheid government they had the most sophisticated military.
Okay.
Because they were assisted by the Israel and European countries. Umkhonto Wesizwe, APLA, all the South African Communist Party, all the military wing of the liberation movement, they will not defeat it. But we had the song, not to defeat them, but we had the song that kept us wanting to achieve that freedom.
Okay.
That's what is important about that. And if you go to the song, the famous song, Dubula Ibono, I still need to do a lot of interviews or archive on Peter Mokaba, because they say Peter Mokaba, when he became the first ANC youth president into the 1994 election, he was singing that song everywhere for the young lions, right? And then Madiba called him and say, he's not a president yet, he's a president of the ANC, or he was going to be the president of the ANC. Madiba will call him and say, I want to see you at my office. And they say Peter Mokaba always went to Shell House and wait for Madiba's car to go out so he can go to his office because of that song. They say in revolutionary structures, we don't translate a liberation, a struggle song. That's where our problem started. Dubula Ibuno, it was translated,
okay.
Right? And then everybody everywhere could hear it. But in my book, I talk about Dubula Ibuno because political prisoner James Mange, the Rasta guy there, talked about it. I will send you a PDF proof so you can read it. But what he was saying, which is what I've always been saying, is that A song is an archive. Song is an archive. It's our archive. It's an African archive. Everywhere in Africa, we have sang. I have said, the Jewish people during the Holocaust, they sang, before they were guests. There's a professor who wrote a PhD on that, and a book came out. Her last name is Gilbert, about the songs of the Holocaust, the survivors there. On Robben Island, they sang. Everywhere they sang. During the Anglo-Boer War, 1999 to 1902, the African who were put in a camp by the British, they also sang. There's a professor who was at the University of Potchefstroom. She wrote a PhD and a book on that. So everybody has sang. So I grew up in Garankuwa. Tshungu is from Soweto. My current wife is from Tembisa. They tell me that the yellow mellows, they were coming into the township. We were in Buputatswa and it was a little bit secluded, saved by our president Mangope. But they say that when the hippos, the yellow mellow, came into the township, everywhere they shot, right? They were shooting. They shot people. There were kids who were killed. We are not talking about 76. We're talking about when the Amabun went into the township. That was violence, right? So if the African National Congress, the Pan-African Congress, all the liberation movements, South African Communist Party are fighting against a system that is killing people. You can't go there with a cake, You also have to be violent because they are violent, right? So that's another context that you can say Dubulai Bono comes from. And it's not saying that when we are saying Dubulai Bono, it means that we sing it now and we go outside and we'll dubula any white person that we see. You cannot delete this song in the history of the liberation song because there's going to be a gap. We're going to say these people were shot during this period, and then there was a song, and then you delete it. What are you going to put there? And I'm saying, last week when you were saying you have white people to talk about this, I wish I had made that, but I was in Bloemfontein, and students were writing. If I had part of that panel, I was going to ask them, in your history, the history of apartheid, the history of colonization, you don't have songs that speaks towards the people that you're oppressing. They have them. They stem. But there are other songs about remember that guy who shot people in Pretoria Square? They have songs about those people because those are their heroes. They cannot delete those songs. When they think about that time, they sing those songs. It's just that we don't hear it. Tina, the media is always focused on us. So when Peter Mokaba was singing it was recorded at the Centenary Festival in Mangaung. President Jacob Zuma sang it. And I was happy that he sang it so that it can be recorded. Because basically was saying you cannot remove this song from the liberation struggle history. Because this is an archive. It's like a dictionary. Then there's a history of this song. Then if you're going to remove it, you have to tore that page. When this went to the court, the organization brought Professor Lisgana. I was not happy because I'm a historian, but I was not called. And I've written on this, right? But sometimes when you go to court, you make a strategy. We're going to bring a white professor who's going to speak to white people. What Ramaphosa did to go to Washington, Nama Bono, it was a strategy. We might not agree with it, but he was able to have normal access into the Oval House because of those people. I will look at the same way why the court on the Son to Bulabuni, a white professor was brought because we are there. I've sent you an article that I did in 2011 when the song came for the first time, and the president, Julius Silo Malema, was in the court.
Yeah.
The SABC
Don't
called
tell me how to remember my history.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
And then I spoke about the song. The SABC called me and they also asked me about the song. And in my interview with SABC recently, I've said, this is not the EFF song. We respect the EFF, Julius Malem. I respect him for singing that song. I respect him for having brought the land issue back to the table on the agenda. For 30 years, the African National Congress never brought that to the table. So he's not perfect. Cyril Ramaphosa is not perfect. Madiba is not perfect. Motlanthe was not perfect. Jacob Zuma is not perfect. Thabo Mbeki was not perfect, right? So when we criticize somebody who's doing something good, we mustn't do it as if the others are perfect. They are not. They didn't bring the issue of land on the table. People will continue to sing this song. Our children are going to sing this song because at the time when they sing it, it's going to have a context why they're singing it, right? It's not going to go away. There's no song of the struggle that will go away. I made an example of this song, wedding song, Shaila Mabala Umkonto Wez. So the songs will continue to be transformative to suit the agenda of the time. Okay? Some people, white and black, they say, it's unfortunate that some people, when they sing that song, they are going to go and kill people. And I just want evidence. Right? When a song is sung, and that's not the only song, Umshinwa, give me my machine gun.
Yeah.
People who have sang it, even the president, Jacob Zuma, I never saw him in the street shooting people with the machine gun. That song has got a context, right?
I've never seen people being killed because of that song.
And
but
the last song I want to mention is O.R. Tambo, Give Us His Bamo, Siaipitol,
Yeah.
Those songs, they talk about apartheid government that was oppressing and killing people. I mean, the case of Albert Lutul, the case of the four, they killed them. So how can you go there with a cake to people who are killing you? So when we talk about any song, we need to remember its context.
Yes, correct. Because I remember Nelson Mandela, even Cyril Ramaphosa, Peter Mokaba, they sang this song after the funeral of Chris Hani. And that song goes like, Thina batho ba Mkhonto, we are determined to kill the Boers. Yasisimele okuma volala lava amabono. Very sombre.
Every president have sang it.
Yeah. So when you listen to Peter Mokaba explaining why, the context thereof, it makes sense because you think of all the massacres that have happened in South Africa. They happened at the helm of apartheid. And I'm more inclined to agree with you to say this is our historical archive, because instead of picking up arms and fight the system head on, toe to toe, we instead resisted through struggle songs. And Peter Mokaba does indicate that these are the songs that were against the system. When our people were killed in Bisho, when our people were killed in Sharpeville, we sang this song. And if anything, if this was taken into literal sense, therefore there would have been a civil war in South Africa. There would have been,
Yes.
bloodbath in South Africa because of these songs. But it has never happened to date. And I wonder how you make, or what you make of ex-freedom fighters who now tend to turn their back on these songs. I wonder what you make of that, because you are saying clearly that there's no way we can delete history.
Yeah, no.
Mhm.
Look, and I will be interested to see the interview of Peter Mukava. So
Sure.
I tend
Now we're
to
gonna play it. Yeah.
I tend to
This is, in the first place, not a slogan. It is a chant. A chant that was there as part of the tradition of our military struggles, armed struggle. We sang it, or we chanted, in order to still ourselves in training, in order to sustain our solidarity. And it has been there with Zipra, it was there with FAPLA, and as Comrade Parks has pointed out, we've been chanting this slogan for years. And even in this, during the funeral, we sang about Hambaka Mkonto, and we pointed out in a song that we are determined to kill the boss. That is the literal sense. But that has never been policy of the ANC. The question of Boer has changed in content on the basis of the realities of the situation and our policy. It has always meant the enemy as a system of white supremacy, and has never meant any individual on the basis of this or that color. And even as we chanted these slogans during the armed struggle, they have never driven us to the houses of the whites or to the farmers as individuals to kill them. Now, what has changed? Look, we have decided to bury Comrade Chris Hani in a military fashion. And what is happening in that military, in MK, is that we do have our chants. We do have our songs. These are not songs that were decided by a conference. They are songs that emerge as people work together in a particular situation. Now, we are not making news. We are fighting, we are engaged in a struggle. And wherever we engage in struggle, media is there. We cannot change our chants.
to have more respect for him now as I go through this. My wife is from Zanini, so when we drive there, we pass the stadium.
Yes.
Yeah, and then he becomes so important that it will be interesting to have somebody write a book, a memoir, a biography on him. James Mange, he's an MK.
Mm-hmm.
James Mange was on death row for 12 months in Pretoria.
Mm-hmm.
To be on death row every day. Every morning they take you, they hang you, they take all of us here every day,
Mm-hmm.
and then you are on death row. So every morning when you wake up, you ask yourself, is this my day? And the importance of the anti-apartheid movement, the Dutch international anti-apartheid movement. You had 300 advocates who petitioned the United Nations that James Mange must not be hanged.
Mm-hmm.
And they put pressure on the United Nations. The United Nations put pressure on the apartheid government. And James Mange's death sentence was converted to 15 years on 20 years on Robben Island. He almost served 14 because they were released in 1991, 27 of April. This is taken from a film. It was filmed because this was the last group of political prisoners to be released, right? So James Mange, in this book, he wrote my foreword. He's one political prisoner political activist who never left, who never turned away from the songs or the struggle. And that's why I used his interview the way he was saying that, he used an example like, I don't know if he used the stem, but he used a apartheid song that can the Afrikaner remove this from their archive? He asked me that question and he said, for the same reason that they want, we cannot remove this song from the archive. It's part of what, if you go back on time, if you make a film going back on time, it will come. You cannot, it cannot be a whole, right? So you talk about the freedom fighters who moved away from this. Remember, the other thing is what is it? Stomach. There's that thing. Politics of the stomach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which leads them to being sellouts.
Some people have decided that, look, I mean, I'm driving and I cannot believe an old, not old, maybe our age, maybe 40s, 50s, even 60s, African man who says that, Julius Malema must stop singing that song. We must move forward. The economy must come right.
To please who?
But I'm saying to this, I want to get out of my car and ask other people, do you hear what these people is saying? We stop singing this song today. Is the land gonna come back to us? Is the economy gonna be okay if we stop singing the song? Is this song being sung every day to stop the economy from moving forward? So other people that are doing things to to appear good in the people that they work for. I'm a teacher, we don't get paid a lot. And history, you must teach it as it happened. This is what happened. It's history. There's nothing I can do, and that's what I must teach. I have African student in my class. I had white student. I had most white student at FATES. When I teach, I tell them that I don't want you to take my position. These are the facts. You must read them and make up your mind. If you say apartheid was better, support it. If you say apartheid was bad, support it. You cannot just say anyone who's singing this song is going to kill people without facts. So people are being economic with the truth. And I love Bob Marley. Bob Marley's got this quote about truth. He says that
Rastafari.
Yeah, he says truth.
Yeah.
The truth is an offense. The truth is an offense. Every time you tell the truth, you offend people. The truth is an offense, right? So this song and other songs, they'll continue to be there because this is the history. And then when people were fighting for the struggle, dying for the struggle, Chris Hani, all these people, who died, who never got anything. If we marinate the history, what are we saying about them? What are we saying about Pamela, Sabela, Pama? They were killed.
What they died for.
What they died for. There was a famous political prisoner on Robben Island, Jafta Masemola, a PC hardliner. He was a teacher in Mamelodi. He spent more time on Robben Island. So when people say these other people have spent more time on Robben, the other people who spend more time, they are not mentioned. When he was released, the year that he was released, I think 2 years after that, before the election, he was driving his car and then a truck came. It drove on him. People can say it's an accident, but why is this selective? Why are these serious people that were removed before the election, because those are the people who would have made. Okay, I might be wrong, but if Chris Hani lived, I don't think the people who became president after that, I don't think they would have been presidents.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the agenda continues to be bigger. And it's in that light that we feel that the Burkina Faso president needs to be protected. And that's why I was happy to see the security today when I drove in here. I mean, I might be having something, but to have security for people that you love, this American writer, Alice Walker, wrote a book where she titled Anything We Love must be protected. If you love something, if you love your wife, you need to protect.
Sure, by all means.
Yeah, so this is important. It's important that, but maybe to conclude your question is that people who turn away from the struggle to suit the current politics of the stomach, the children, when they read about them, when we're not here, they're not going to have respect for them.
Absolutely. And I have an issue with people who choose to misunderstand the message of the EFF, what the EFF stands for. I was driving down the road and I was approached by, I was wearing my EFF regalia. So this guy greets me and he started saying, Isha, malema bolaya man.
Can I send this book as you talk?
Okay, for the CIC.
I'm listening. You'll get yours.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So that was for the president.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
sure. So this guy says, hey, malema bolaya man. Utlisa ma foreigner kamo. Wabona no arna misebezi. Okay.
It's CSI, right?
CIC.
CIC.
The commander-in-chief, yes,
Okay.
CIC. So the guy, I had to spend 30 seconds to explain that the EFF is not in government. That's number one. I think those concerns should be directed to the government of the day, because we have the so-called borders, but there's no fence. There's a gate, but there is no fence. So how do you then blame EFF, which is an opposition party? We are not even part and parcel of the GNU. Now, you have somebody who accuses the EFF of bringing so-called foreigners into South Africa, which is misguided, because the EFF is not law enforcement. We are not in charge of Home Affairs. We're not in charge of the military. We're not in charge of the police. So I think we need to educate our people, because at the end of our conversation, he was convinced that, but you're quite right. And I think that is the message that we need to drive every time we come across these, because equally, when you look at the song, kill the boer, kill the farmer, people choose to misunderstand. They misconstrue the message to believe that we are saying white people should be killed, which is not the case. So I strongly believe. In fact, I concur with you, Prof, when you say also the media focuses mainly on black people than white people. So we need also a media that is more responsible in terms of driving the message of social cohesion, and also telling the truth as it is, Prof.
Yeah. And that's why every organization needs to have their own media, so that you can push your message. Because the media is selective. The media selects. The media might use the snippets of this interview, and they might pick what they know is gonna make the people that they want to AfriForum and them, to say this professor is supporting this, and just show that piece, or else if they listen to the whole interview, they can get a sense of what is going on. So there is misinformation that every organization needs to work against. When the president of the EFF says this and the media says this, you need the organization's media to come, ka face ya media to say, okay, listen to this. This is what he said. Yeah, it's very important. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. You can rephrase it.
You are. You are.
Yeah.
When we were talking, when we were preparing for this podcast, you did indicate that CIC Julius Malema is the last real ANC Youth League president. And I wonder, what makes you think like that?
Again, the media is going to pick up on this and then say, this professor, this is what he's saying. When did he leave? When was he fired? What year was it?
2011?
2011, 2012.
Yeah, 2012, yes.
Yeah, 2012. Because I think when we were at the Mangau for the centenary, I think he was still a member. He was suspended, right? And then he was fired maybe that January 2012. So when you look at the history of the ANC Youth League, you must trace it to the beginning. You must look at 1943 when it was formed, 1943 or 44, and why it was formed. The generation of Anthony Muzwake Limbete, A.P. Mda, Abu Piche, because there are key members before we can mention the others, and they are not mentioned. When it was formed, they felt that the ANC was very peaceful. They were conservative. Dr. Moroka, Dr. Truma. They felt that they cannot continue to go to England, write letters, They felt that the ANC needs to be militant.
Sure.
And that's why the ANC Youth League was formed. If you go back to the manifesto of the ANC Youth League, that's why it was formed. And then, banning in 1960 after Sharpeville happened. We don't know what happened to the Youth League, but when we were coming back to unbanning of the ANC, we had this powerful young lion, Peter Mugabe, and he was dancing with that song. And then we had others as well. I don't think we can compare with any ANC youth president with Anthony Limbete because he was a Pan-Africanist. He was a lawyer. But of all the ANC youth president, I will take Julius Malema and put him next to Anthony Limbete because the issues that they are raising, economic freedom in our lifetime. I don't know if it's in the Freedom Charter. I need to go back and look at it. But when the Youth League, under his leadership, was saying economic freedom in our lifetime, it made our blood hot because you cannot continue to be poor in your homeland, right? People have said, these black people want their land back. What are they going to do with their land? Before white people came in Africa, what were we doing with our land? I come from Tlhakong. When I was 10, my grandfather had cows. There were Banele Mashimu, Mabele. I never saw my grandfather with money. We had food, milk from the cows. We had mabele, nebasila, healthy food.
Sure.
We had mirojo.
Long lifespan as well.
Yeah. And my grandfather, I really must ask my sister how old he was when he passed. I will guess that he was over 80, even 90. Healthy, still working the land, So I always tell people about that example. My grandfather didn't have a PhD, but they were working the land. We were never poor. We had everything. Now, people who have taken the land, who have cattle, now they have everything that belong to us. They are telling us that, what are we going to do with the land? You see where I'm driving it to. You look, other people are saying, okay, we have the right to decide. Again, a Bob Marley song on Zimbabwe. Every man, I put a woman because I'm decolonized. Every woman, every man, and a woman have the rights to decide their destiny. Not all of us want to farm. If I have a land, I can build townhouse, and people can come and rent. I can build a mall. People can pay rent, right? So you cannot say, what are black people going to do with the land? That's an insult. It's an insult to us. It's an insult to my grandparents who never had education.
Because we've worked the land before.
We have worked the land before. And today, who's working the land? In the farms, right? They come with their jeeps, drive around, but who work the land? It's still the African people who are working on the land. So when Julius Malema was the president of the ANC Youth League, it's like they have read the Anthony Lembende era, and they said this ANC, the ANC of 1940s of the Dr. Moroka, Dr. Kluma, was conservative. It was like their generation, Malema's presidents of the Youth League, were saying the same thing about the ANC at the time. And if the powers that be don't want that direction, they will remove you. That's my reading. And that's why I want to have an interview with him, because I want to get a sense, how did his presidency get to economic freedom in our lifetime? I mean, that was a powerful group. The guy they killed in Durban, what's his name? Makatla.
Oh, Cindy Somakatla.
Yeah. And then Floyd Shivambu. I mean, it's a history. We cannot also cut it, right? You cannot remove that history. And then we had, who's the other guy? The current minister of...
international...
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if the elders of the NC had seen the power in these young guys and just protected them, say, this is the future of the NC, we will not be in the mess of the May 29, 2024 elections. And I just want to say again, when the EFF was founded, some of us from that time, we gave our vote to the EFF because the EFF has spoken about the land, right? They've spoken about economic freedom in our lifetime. We don't want to die and leave our children in the poverty. I'm a middle class person now because of my education, but we are few,
Sure. That said, do you think the people that you've mentioned, like your Ronald Lamola, like your Floyd Shivambu, are now compromised because Floyd Shivambu has now left and joined the MK, which we are not quite sure about its ideology because it throws its weight behind apartheid Israel, while we have Ronald Lamola, who's in the ANC but does not really play an active role. What can you say about these two gentlemen who have broken away from the
my
ideology?
brother, look,
Mhm.
I will quote Bob Marley again. The truth is an offense. If you tell the truth,
No, let's lay it bare.
when you tell the truth, it's like
Mhm.
how am I going to respond to this one without rattling the cage?
Let's call a spade a spade.
I'm going to answer this question with me. People who is consciousness is mine today at 57 will not get those positions. Will not get the positions. I won't get the position of any in the look. My entire training is in heritage, but I've never been in the Department of Arts and Culture. As a historian, I have kept all the letters that I applied because if another truth commission can come, I will take it out. The previous chief heritage officer at Robben Island was not a South African. I applied for that position with a PhD on Robben Island. They didn't even call me. So I'm so angry about these things. And that's how I can respond to the question that you are saying. Because it's crazy. It's crazy that we don't see the power in the people that are South Africans who are qualified to get the job done.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think if the EFF can have an internal conference and do a review,
Mhm.
I'm happy to come to the review. The power that the organization feel has lost because of the formation of other parties can come back, because the issue of land is very important.
Mhm.
A lot of people still don't have land. They can speak about their grandparents who had land, and they can point the land, that farm, that's my grandparents' land.
Yeah. And as you made reference to Bob Marley, you also touched on decolonization. 2025 marks a decade of the Fist Must Fall movement. And at the heart of the movement was free, decolonized education. And of course, now we look at um, the education system. Have we had enough transformation in as far as the ideals of Fist Must Fall are concerned? You look at the use of home language in South African universities. Through my observations, indigenous languages remain marginalized, and we have English as a medium of instruction. What needs to be done to ensure that we incorporate home languages in the education sector, and to ensure that African people access education in their own language, like white people do? Prof, what needs to be done really to ensure that we bring about inclusivity in terms of languages in institutions of higher learning?
Um, So I'm a professor of history, but I say I'm a professor of decolonizing South African and African history and heritage, because my scholarship. So Robben Island has framed my scholarship because when I finished my master's in 1998, I worked 2000. I worked for Robben Island. So my training is informed by the heritage, the history of Robben Island, which is a powerful history of the anti-apartheid, of the struggle against colonialism and apartheid. I did my PhD in a black university, Howard University. If when you Google them, they say that they are teaching from a black and Pan-African black scholarship. They are not hiding it. So I went to Howard, and at Howard, I learned about, for the first time at Howard, I learned about um, Walter Rodney, how Europe underdeveloped Africa. Having had a master's in the South African University, you are never taught those authors, right? So I'm actually reviewing an article on the 10th year anniversary of the Fish Must Fall. I tell the people, and this is on record, I got my job at Wits University because of the Fish Must Fall movement. I would not have got in there because I came back from Howard in 2006. I was a PhD candidate. I came back to write my PhD. But if I was a white person, any university would have taken me. But my course outline, course academic transcript, it shows the courses that I've done, the history of Pan-Africanism, the history of Black consciousness, of African religious political thought. And then when I look at it, the universities were not teaching that. So I was only able to get into the South African University at Wits in 2018 because the fees must for 2015, 2016, from there onward, the students continue to say they want a decolonized curriculum. My CV, now when they look at it, it's a decolonized curriculum because I come with all this that they are not teaching. When fees must fall at Wits into 2015, the political science department at Wits did not have an African person. The students, the majority of the students who were studying, they were African. They wrote a memo on it, which they appeared on the Mail and Guardian, said that in 2015, 2016, the University of the Witwatersrand Department of Political Science does not have a lecturer, whether it's a professor or just a lecturer who look like us. The majority of us were black. So that movement was very, very important in terms of the transformation of higher education. I was working for the Council on Higher Education when the Fees Must Fall was happening. And the Council on Higher Education is monitoring what is happening in higher education. So I went, as part of my job, I went to Union Building that March. For the first time in the 21st century, the South African education, the universities were shut down because of this movement. The last time it happened was with the June 1976. So when we look at it, we can see that the youth are the people who change the course of the country. We look at the ANC Youth League, Madiba's generation, Anthony Limpende's generation. They changed the course of the history. 1976, Sharpeville as well. 1976, Soweto uprisings, Marikana, and the Youth League of the ANC, this era of Peter Mugabe and the others, and Julius Malema also changed the direction where we can go, because people don't want to talk about this truth again because it offends them. When the EFF got into parliament, people were no longer sleeping. right? We had people, all people who go to parliament. Those positions belongs to us, you know. Not because I have a PhD, but we have a lot of people who don't have PhD, but who can get into those positions. But we have all people who sit in parliament who are not doing anything. They are earning a lot of money. But when the EFF got into parliament, everybody wanted to listen to parliament because they were debate, they were asked question. Okay, Honorable Minister, you need to explain 1, 2, 3. That thing was not happening before the EFF got into parliament. So where we need to give what did they give credit, we must. You know, we must not always focus on the weaknesses of the organization. Every organization, the DA, Democratic Party, they have their weaknesses. Everybody's got them.
Yeah, but the inclusion of home languages or indigenous languages, as an integral part of the education system, Prof.
Okay.
It seems like we're lacking there.
Yeah. In 2014, I reviewed the language policy in South Africa in basic education, higher education. You can Google it. It was published by Codesria. And the title of my paper was African Language Policy, Freedom or Oppression, something like that. Because when I reviewed the language policy from 1994, which was now 10 years in 2014, it was 20 years, I think, 1994 to 2014. You can do the maths there. But I looked at the policy of post-apartheid South Africa government on language policy. And I found that whilst we have good policies on language, they are not implemented.
They remain on paper.
Yeah. And the point that I made in that article was that President Jacob Zuma was the president at the time. When he is giving the SONA speech, he should be doing that speech in isiZulu. The reason why I said that, Jacob Zuma didn't go to school. He's self-taught. He's intelligent in his own language. He could have done that. And then the Americans, the Chinese, everybody will have South Africans who speak isiZulu to translate that SONA into their language, and that creates jobs. When I was in Washington, D.C., the South African embassy there, Barbara Masekela was the High Commissioner there. When they have functions, they invite South Africans, we go there. The Chinese embassy in Washington, D.C., when they come to a function like that, you have two Chinese, you have one who speaks Mandarin, you have one who speaks English. They want to understand what he's saying. And then when they write the memo to Xi Jinping, it's written in Mandarin. Okay? So in South Africa, when 1994 happened, the ANC government said all 11 languages plus now are official languages. But that was not enough because in Parliament, before 1994, the Hansard was publishing the parliamentary debates in Afrikaans and English. When 1994 happened, when they say official languages are 11, they should have published those in all those languages. They say it's a lot of money, but they should have chosen. They should have chosen a particular African language. Kiswahili in Tanzania is an official language.
Sure.
President Mwalimu Nyerere, when he was speaking to the Tanzanian people, was speaking in Kiswahili. Jacob Zuma, when he's speaking to us here for SONA, he's not talking to America, he's talking to us. He was supposed to be in an African language. Now, me and you, my brother, I don't know how many kids you have. I have 4 kids. Your colleagues here. When we are in Pick and Pay in Woolies, we talk to our kids in English, you know. I mean, Professor Ngugwa Tshungu just passed recently. He wrote that book, Decolonizing the Mind. He was writing in Kikuyu, his African language, because he's saying that until we write, my university, they have an African language policy. I want this book to be translated into Setswana and other African languages. Because these songs, they're in African languages, you know. So that, and I'm going to challenge the Department of Basic Education to say, can I reduce this so that it can get into their schools, you know, so that the students can learn in their languages.
Yeah.
So the last point, we haven't done justice on our languages. We haven't. We haven't, because the first thing, when I come here, you should have said, Professor Neo, o bua Setswana ntate. Re ka etsa interview ya gago ka Setswana, or wena o bua Tsonga. Yeah. Kabo is Tsonga. You should have said you understand Tsonga. We're going to conduct it in Tsonga. You see? Again, when we go to the machine, ATM, especially ABSA, they have languages. They ask us, which language do you want to use? The professor is still using English, you know. So it really starts with us.
We're stuck.
Yeah, we are stuck. But if government can start to say, we need to do 1, 2, 3 with the African languages, like they've done with Afrikaans, they've done with English, because it comes with policy.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
then they can liberate some of us. Sometimes, the last point, when I'm in the class, I try to explain, and then English run away. I use Setswana, and then I ask another student in the class, can you translate that in English? You know, because Setswana is Keyanse, right? And they say it's an official language. So why should I be afraid to use it in the classroom?
I mean, and now when we continue like this, for me, it's betrayal of the highest form of the class of 1975 that marched against Afrikaans as a medium of instruction.
Yeah,
if
76.
today, 76 rather.
Yeah.
So it becomes a serious setback if 30 years later or after democracy, we have not made, meaningful progress in that regard. But maybe a re izamenyana re buenyana Sepedi le Setsonganyana. Setswana, ke Setswana sa gago. Yeah, ho na le pina ela o ba e bitseng o Igwijo. Kuna ngoma le ya Mzabalazo ne. Ba re di kwele ditaba tse monate ba re wa tsamaya a tsamaye. I want to know, mostly I hear these songs sang by factions, a certain faction of a certain political party.
Yes.
But already kwele ditaba tse monate or so and so wa tsamaya.
Yeah.
Those ones, do they fit in on your definition of is ingoma zemzabalazo, or these ones are purely factional songs?
Look, the izingoma zomzabalazo, you can classify them according to how you want to classify them. Professor Sifiso Ndlovu, who's is a professor at UNISA, who is Zulu. He's my Melon. I have funding called Melon Fellowship. He's my mentor because the university want you to get somebody who's a expert in the area of liberation struggle to help you with your work. So Professor Sifiso Ndlovu, because he's from KZN, he said to me, Neo, I know we're talking about the 20th century in your book, but you will need to put 2 to 3 pages to say that even during Shaka's time, during the wars against colonialism all over Africa, when they were going to war, they were singing, so you can have war songs of war or battle, I mean, we see even in Shaka Ilibende, or sometimes when you say this, but Shaka, the one that is playing one, which it's better than the colonial one, they sing. So there were also love songs, on Robben Island. There is this song that they were singing, Lizzy, Standa Sam, Lizzy, Muratiwa, because they were singing that song because they were missing the feminine aspect, their sisters, their mothers, their wives.
And back home, you had the likes of Chico Twala with
Manelo.
We Miss You, Manelo.
Yes, We Miss You, Manelo. So we can, actually, when I started to my proposal on this book on the centenary of the NC, I was saying I'm going to write it according to the presidency, but not looking at the presidency. Say from 1912, president of the NC was Dr. Dube. In his presidency, I'm going to look at the songs that they were singing, right? Just like that, until I get to O.R. Tambo, Madiba. And then with the NC Youth League also, I was going to do the same, the songs that they were singing. So you can classify the song that you mentioned. They say that during Thabo Mbeki's period, there were no songs that were sung because he was an intellectual. He was. I don't know how true that is, but
sloganeering.
Yeah, he was more of the poet,
Yeah.
But the song that you mentioned, every time that we have the ANC national elections for the presidents, the top 6, maybe it's top 10 now, I don't know. When they do that, those who want me, they will sing a song that is positive about me, and those that they don't want me, they will sing a song.
They'll say Pagama.
Yeah, Pagama, Kinako, And abanye, they will say, no, the one that we're singing, Rutluedi Tava, also, so there will always be that. And every election, maybe even for every organization, other than white organization, I'm sure there are new songs. Song is power, and we cannot remove any song, whether people like it or they don't like it. We cannot remove it from our archives.
Sure.
Yeah.
Prof, thank you very much for making time, and we appreciate your wisdom. We'll continue drinking from your cup. This has been the most one of the most insightful podcasts I've had. So thank you very much for coming through. We'll make time and dip into the book and make sense of it, because really we need to tell our own stories. We are tired of learning about Jan van Riebeeck. We need our own history. Our people, our students, our learners in school must learn about Robben Island. They must know about the history of South Africa. So thank you very much for providing us with this book. I'll definitely hand it over to the CIC.
And if you can say, if I can have proof that you got it.
This podcast is proof enough that the book has been given to the CIC. So definitely. Yeah. So thank you very much for coming through, Prof.
Thank you very much for the invitation. As a historian, you go everywhere where they want to hear your story. You don't become a media where you only go there because they're gonna give you something, right? Mm-hmm. Because our agenda as historians, and especially African historians in South Africa, is to decolonize, to Africanize our stories. That's why I'm saying, don't tell me how to remember my history.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much, people of South Africa, Africa, and the world, for tuning in. And please continue to subscribe to the EFF podcast on YouTube. We are done, and until we meet again, good ekwengeta. Kanmamba. Sant.